my parents were married in the 70s, and my sister Amy, she was born in 79, and then Jenny was born in 78, and then my brother Daniel was conceived, and Daniel unfortunately passed away when he was 24 weeks old. And he's my brother, and I never met him, but I know him, and I love him. And through the grief, my parents got pregnant again, and Mary was conceived, and Mary died. She was a stillborn. She had the cord wrapped around her neck 3 times, and she passed away. As you can imagine, my mother fell into a deep, deep depression, and again, through the grief, she had a dream, and she said that someone came to her in a dream, and they said everything was going to be okay, and then 9 months later, Landon, you were born. And that's the story my mother used to tell me every year around my birthday. That was my birth story. She said, "You're a healer, Landon. You healed me before you were even born." And I'm here to tell you that you're a healer. You were born to be a healer. You're here, and chiropractic chose you. You didn't choose chiropractic. It chose you. And there's somebody in this room who knows that they're a healer. And they've known it for a really long time. And they know it so much that the beat of that drum is the rhythm of their life. It's so hard. There's someone in the room that knows that. There's someone in this room who used to know that they were a healer. And they've forgotten it because the world has kicked them in the teeth too many times. And they begin to forget that they're a healer. And then there's someone in the room who's never been told they're a healer, and that's why I'm here. I'm here for that person. And I don't know which one of you it is, but I'm glad that I'm here and that Tori gave me the opportunity to speak with you today. Because from this moment forward, you will know that you are called to be a healer. Now, I told you that story to tell you this story, and that is that chiropractic is not about symptoms. It is not the diagnosis and treatment of disease. It is about life. And my mom told me that story, and she knew that I was going to be a healer. And so naturally, when I was a little kid and you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said, I want to be a canine cop. Because we were watching Rescue 911 and Rin Tin Tin, I don't know. Cool shows. But that was what I thought my journey was supposed to be. And then one day changed my life forever. I was about 11 years old, and I grew up here in San Diego. And I was with some friends, and we were at a baseball diamond. It was just the 3 of us. And one buddy said, I'm going to pitch. The other one said, I'm going to bat. And they're like, why don't you catch? And I'm like, sure, that sounds good. So I get behind the plate, and Mickey throws a fastball, and Cassius swings to the fence, and he hits a foul tip. And I had only time to turn my head before the ball smashed into my face. And the problem was I wasn't wearing any protective gear. It knocked me down, but I was a tough kid, so I got up, brushed myself off, didn't tell my mom, because more importantly, I didn't want to get grounded for doing something so foolish, and I went home. And then I started to develop headaches. And then one headache turned into 2 headaches. And then I went to my mom, and my mom did what any mom would do in the 80s, and she gave me an aspirin for the headache. And then we went to school, and my sister came home from college, and she said, Mom, what's wrong with Landon's lip? It's not moving all the way. And it was just this lower division of the facial nerve that didn't move all the way. And my mom grabbed my face, and she said, look at me, boy, smile. And she could see just this slight paralysis or non-movement in my face. So we ran off to the doctors. Went to the doctors, and we did all the tests. The nerve scans, MRIs, all the tests that the doctors would do, and they said, you have Bell's palsy, it's a paralysis of the facial nerve. Most of them get better. Yours will probably get better. Here's a new medication for the headaches that you're experiencing. Take this medication and we'll check in with you. Well, the problem was that my body had a reaction with that medication, and instead of having a headache 2 or 3 times a week, I started waking up with what are called rebound headaches. I would go to bed and I would wake up screaming at 7 a.m. every morning for 2 weeks straight. My mom was freaking out. Back to the doctors we went, try a different medication. I started to develop migraines. I couldn't function for the first 3 or 4 hours of the day. I was taken out of school and homeschooled, and my life was going downhill fast. What was worse is the paralysis didn't get better, it progressed. It went up the left side of my face and down into my neck, and it looks a lot like what you see now. And this was my life. We went from doctor to doctor. I developed a condition you might be aware of. It's called doc-itis. It's when you have inflammation of a doctor's office. I didn't want anything to do with doctors. Every time I went, it was the same story. You have Bell's palsy, most of them get better. There's nothing we can really do. Here's another drug to take. You have Bell's palsy, most of them get better. Yours isn't getting better. Here's another drug to take. It wasn't that they were doing the wrong thing. They just didn't have a solution for my problem. And so they're a doctor, and I'm a 13, 14-year-old kid, and they say there's nothing they can do. Guess what I started to believe? There's nothing I can do. So that's how I lived. I was on medications, pushed and prescribed. I was self-medicating. I was completely angry. I was getting bullied in school. I figured out that if I was just a mean, angry person, I'd get bullied less, because I don't know if you ever met a bully, but the only thing that stops them most of the time is a punch in the nose. So I could hardly have a conversation with my family, let alone get in front of you guys. They walked on eggshells around me. It was a horrible, horrible time. And it got so bad and so dark at one point that I almost considered taking God's greatest gift, my own life. And fortunately, God sent an angel, my baby sister, and she just said no. She saw me, I was there, it happened. She looked right at me and she said, Landon, no. And I stopped. So I was working at a restaurant, and we had this guy, we called him Crazy Uncle Verl. Not because he was my uncle, but I think he was a little loopy. And he said, you ought to go see my doctor, he's different. And I said, I've got doc-itis, I don't go to doctors. They say the same thing over and over again, it's boring. And so he said, no, he's different, I think he can help you. So I went into this doctor's office reluctantly, and immediately I found out that this doctor was different. Because as I walked in, there was this lovely lady at the front desk, and she came around the desk and she said, hi, you must be Landon, we've been expecting you. You don't shake hands? Why are you making my video? This is a good video. Okay? You're making it weird. So she said, you must be Landon, we've been expecting you. The healing started when I walked in the door. No doctors had ever greeted me like that, and it was the CA. She also didn't have the go to hell window. You ever seen one of those? They don't look at you like, can I have your ID and your medical card? Okay, great, thank you. Go to hell. Shut the window on you, right? So they didn't have one of those. That was good. So then I went in and I met with this doctor, and he just listened to me for the first time. He listened to the entire story. Didn't look at his watch or his clipboard. He looked in my eyes and he really listened to me. And then when he was done listening to me, he told me back what I had shared with him. So I knew he was listening to me. And then he said, here's the thing. I think your body has dis-ease. It's at a state of not being in dis-ease. And there's chemical, structural, and emotional components to health. And if we just remove the interference, then your body will heal itself. So the body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism, and it needs no input. When two cells come together, a body is formed. It just needs a lack of interference, and you have interference all through your system. So I'm like, well, that's cool. I never thought about it that way. My body's meant to heal. Okay, so what's it going to take? I said, well, it's non-invasive, and it doesn't cost $1 million. What I'm going to do is I'm going to check your nerve system, and I'm going to start adjusting to remove that interference. I'm also going to give your body healthy nutrition so that you can basically give your body the building blocks that it needs so that you can express health. And then we do this technique called the Neuro Emotional Technique, where we go through and we release those traumas from all the emotional trauma that you've experienced. He took me in front of a mirror and he said, smile, and he did a manual muscle test, and I weakened every time. I couldn't smile at myself. And then he did what I thought was kind of this weird, magic stuff, and it's all based in science. And then he did it again. I cried my eyes out looking in the mirror, and then I smiled, and I was strong for the first time in my life with the Neuro Emotional Technique. It's a chiropractic technique that removes a psychosomatic subluxation. So as I decided to become a patient in his office, I paid for one visit. I was 16 years old. I paid for one visit for my working at the restaurant, and my grandma paid for the other. So don't listen to anybody when they say they can't afford you. They can't not afford you, right? And so something crazy happened. In the first month, I only had one headache. In the second month, I had no headaches. It was the first time in 5 years I hadn't had a headache in a month. But the bigger thing was I left that office and I had hope. I had real hope. He said, Landon, I don't know if your facial paralysis is going to get better under my care, but I do know that your life is going to get better as a patient in my office. And I can guarantee you that. And I said, I'm in. So at 16 years old, I knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It turns out my mother was right, and yours is too. I'm a healer. And I knew I wanted to be a doctor of chiropractic for the rest of my life. Chiropractic is not about symptoms. It's about life. I still have symptoms. I don't have any of the headaches. It's rare that I ever get one, but I have this. But it's just so you can remember me. I'm like a Super Bowl commercial. I love you, Katie, you're gonna remember it. And it's worth more than $1 million. So chiropractic is not about symptoms. You are a healer. And I think about chiropractic and this beautiful sacred gift of the most powerful profession on earth that we get to live, that we were called to, that we didn't choose, that chose us, right? You're a healer. Chiropractic is not about symptoms, it's about life, right? But I think about chiropractic and it reminds me of the story of the 3 bricklayers, right? You got water? Are you a germaphobe like this guy?
There's none in there, but yeah.
Well, what good are you? So, the 3 bricklayers, right? You ever heard this story? Just say no, because I'm going to tell you anyway. There's a man walking through a village, and he's never been there before, and he sees these guys over there, and they're laying brick, and he's got nothing to do, so he says, I'm going to go strike up a conversation. He says, I walks up to the first bricklayer, he's like, hey, what are you doing? And that guy says, well, you must be the village idiot. What does it look like I'm doing? I'm laying brick. Can you leave me alone? He's like, got it. Keeps walking by, walks up to the next bricklayer, and he says, hey, what are you doing? And that man says, well, I'm making money so that I can provide a roof over the house for my family and give them food, and go on vacations and spend quality time with them. It's like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Then he walks up to the third bricklayer and he says, what are you doing? And the man stops. He stands up, he looks right at him in the eyes. He said, I'm glad you asked. So I'm building a temple for the house of the living God. That's the intention. That's the intention we have to have. When someone places their head in our hands and they ask to be healed. Never again. And I've been doing this for about 14 years, and I can say to you with complete honesty that there have been times in my office where I've gone in and I was the first bricklayer and I was just laying brick. It's just the truth. Like, okay, 50 more? All right. And then there are a lot of times when I was the second bricklayer, but the times when I got the best clinical outcomes for my patients, I was the third bricklayer, right? And God has a way of reminding you that that is the case, and that's what you should do. And I got a reminder just this last week. I had a patient come in, really bad sciatic case. She came in, I've been taking care of her. She's not really progressing. We're fighting an HMO to get an MRI. We get the MRI. They say it's clean, no disc, no nothing. Okay. I said, you got to be a squeaky wheel. Called them on Friday. This is this Friday. I called them, not this Friday, last Friday. Got to be the squeaky wheel. Get in there. I want your records. I want to look at the MRI. I want my eyes on it. I want to help them. Be your advocate, right? She's confined to a wheelchair. She went from like limping to walker to a wheelchair in a matter of a couple of months. Did not sit right with me at all. And she's getting adjusted by me. That's funny. Funny joke. Call her on Friday. Tell her to be the squeaky wheel. They go in the ER Sunday. They go in the ER Sunday. She's been throwing up. The doctor says, let's just do a CT scan, just see what's going on. Well, since you're here. They've already been to the doctor 9 times. They've already had MRIs. They've been told they're fine. CT scan, lump in the breast, lytic lesions all throughout bones. They don't even want her to walk. They're afraid her hip's going to break because of the metastasis that's happened. She has primary breast cancer that is going to, and she's hospitalized. I call her husband. And I talk to him and I say, this is your wife. They have thousands of patients who have cancer, but it's your wife. And from now on, you have my permission to do anything you have to do to get them to listen to you because it's your wife. And I'm going to be here for you. And this is my cell phone number. And if you start hitting a wall with this juggernaut of a system, you call me and I'm going to give you a pep talk. Right? I got to be the third bricklayer for him. So on Wednesday, the person who referred her to my office, she comes in after being with her for 4 hours that morning, and she said, we talked about you half of the time, and she cried the whole time. Do you do hospital visits? Because she just wants you to come in there and put your hands on her. I'm a healer. You're a healer. From this moment forward, anytime you start laying brick, you start building a house, because that person is putting their life in your hands to be healed. Thank you very much.